Hello, welcome to Friday Education Slot here in the Manager Critic group. For those that don't know me, I'm Cheryl Andrews, the founder of Step by Step Listening. And today's subject is why don't I change even when I want to? So I want to talk about this from two perspectives. It might be that you are getting frustrated with yourself, but also as a listener, when you're the one that's coaching, mentoring, managing, wanting to motivate or encourage, whether it's your staff member, whether it's a client, or whether it's your children or your partner, and they're saying they want to do something different and then they don't do it. It can be really frustrating to listen to it, whether it's listening to it in ourselves, hearing ourselves do it, or listening to other people. And I want to talk about the 3-step process that we work with at Step by Step Listening, and I hope that that will give you some insights and some understanding. So the number one reason why we don't change is because of we lack clarity. So we don't actually truly understand. We very let's say, I don't know, want to lose weight. But we haven't really dug down into all the emotional benefits that's going to be there. So when you lose weight, then what happens? And look at your 5 senses. What will you hear? What will you see? What will you feel? What will you taste? What will it touch? So how will it feel to you emotionally, but also physically? How will your body feel when you've lost weight? Also, that clarity, if we're talking about what we don't want, so we want to lose weight, the brain isn't particularly good at letting go of stuff, so it doesn't really like the loss of things. So we have to really train the brain in the clarity perspective to look at the solution and the strength. So I'm going to be more confident, my body's going to be fitter and stronger, I'm going to live for longer, I'm going to have more time for my children or my family or my business or my legacy, whatever the thing is that you want to have happen. So those who haven't read Manager Critic, we've got the 7-step process. We've been asking questions about the thing that you want. We're looking at all the language to make sure you say what you mean what you say, and there's no critic in there. You're not being mean to yourself, or I need to lose weight because I'm fat and ugly, for example. That isn't going to be motivating, that's not going to be encouraging. So your clarity has to be very strength focused, very solution focused. So you have to be talking about what you do want. And for many, many people, probably about 80% of my clients, as long as they have real clarity, they really have drilled down into the detail of what they want, and they've got a way of remembering it. That's the other key point. So if you've used all your 5 senses, if you've got things like vision boards or pictures, if you have a smell that's associated with the thing that you want to achieve, and that you have that, whether I use aromatherapy oils to remind my senses of what I'm working towards. You might have something tactile, so I quite often have soft stuff around me if it's something I'm working towards, but I might have a pebble in my pocket, something that I can feel that reminds me of what it is I'm going for. So you have clarity of what you want, and you have things that stimulate the 5 senses that remind you that that's what you're heading for. Because the main reason we don't change is because we've forgotten that's what we wanted, and the brain just carries on its old autopilot. So number 1 is clarity, and really getting the detail and using your 5 senses to find that out. The second reason why is confidence, and confidence comes about when you understand the process. So maybe you know that you need to change. Let's use weight loss though. You need to change the way you eat, but you don't know what to do. You don't know what you need to be eating instead, and so you don't even know where to start. You need to cook differently, but maybe you've never done anything. So actually learning and understanding. So maybe someone else will teach you their process. Now, so you might learn once you know the step-by-step process. You're here on, I think I was talking to Julia yesterday, you're on island A, you want to be on island B, and you know the process to get from one to the other. You know whether there's a plane that gets you across, you know whether there's a boat that gets you across, you know whether you can swim it. Once you know the process, so you have clarity of what the island B is going to be like, you know exactly what it's going to feel like when you get there. You know exactly how you're going to get there, you know the process, and you know your first step, and therefore confidence can happen once you know that process. And along that journey, what tends to go wrong is people forget that even though you're aiming for island B, on island A already things are working. So the most important thing to maintain confidence is once you know the process, every time you make a step that goes closer towards it, it's to celebrate it. Really engage with the fact that change is happening. So we lose confidence when we think change isn't happening, or change isn't happening fast enough. And most of the time it is happening, but it's a bit like a seed under the ground where it's germinating, and eventually the little tiny leaves come out. So this time of year in the UK it's spring, so the buds are starting to appear. Hello Andrea, lovely to see you. We're just talking about why we don't change when we want to change, and I'm just talking about how the confidence process is that when we've got a process of confidence, we know exactly this is where we've got to go, these are the steps. Often we lose confidence because change doesn't seem to be happening, or it's not happening fast enough. And I would argue that you need to really listen for the changes. So let's say, I don't know, you're criticizing yourself before about your weight, we're looking to get slimmer, and you start being less critical. Notice the change. If you start to feel a bit firmer, a bit less bloated, it's looking at any change that's going on. If it's in the business world, Andrea and I haven't talked about follow-ups. So if you noticed that normally there's 10 follow-ups and you only get around to doing one, and you did one and it went really well, it's noticing the small changes that you have made. Confidence gets lost because we don't know the change that's required, we don't know the process, and as it's happening we don't even notice we're making progress. So going back to why does change not happen, clarity of what we want and being really, really clear of it, and having ways to remind ourselves that that's the new destination is really important, using the 5 senses. Confidence is understanding the process. What is the step-by-step process we need to go through? And every time you make progress, even if it's like you only do half a step towards the thing you're going for, is finding ways to celebrate it and recognize change is happening. And for many people, as long as they have those 2 processes in place, clarity and confidence, change happens. But what I want to share with you today is the bit that most people don't understand and don't do. And that is that for every time we change something, we are going to let go of it. So in the case of wanting to be fitter, lighter, we're going to let go of weight. And there's been a benefit to having that weight. So for me, for example, being that I'm bigger, I keeps me warmer, for example. So I will have to tell my system that letting go of the weight's fine, that I've got some big coats and jumpers, and I need to make sure I'm feeding that new information into my brain. So each one of us has our own way of dealing with change. And unfortunately, what tends to happen is we try to actually ask other people how they do change, and we never ever really listen to ourselves. So if you are someone who's listening to somebody and you're getting frustrated because they're not changing, not as fast as you'd like, make sure that you've got clarity of the change they want. Make sure that you are noticing every small change and putting their attention on it and your own attention on it. And lastly, think about change for you. What is like what? So forget the actual thing you're trying to change now. Just change generally. What is your process for change? Because in every change process I've ever done with clients, there's always going to be this bit where you have to let go of something in order to create space for the new stuff. And that usually requires an emotional maybe you're angry or you're frustrated or you're sad. There's usually some kind of negative emotion associated with that. Or there's a really, really elated emotion. And generally speaking, we're not very good at listening to either of those extreme emotions as human beings. If you think about when someone's getting really, really excited, what happens to you? Do you find it difficult? Do you sort of have a little critic that says, oh, they're bragging, they're boastful, or they're getting too big for their boots, or they're going to crash if they don't, if someone's getting really excited. But the other side of it is they're getting really upset about something. Do you find you want to sort of hurry them through the upset bit and try and get them out the other side? And one of the biggest things about the change process is that we have to experience different emotions. We will experience different emotions. And if we cannot just simply sit with them and be with them and let them release, so whether it's have a cry or a bit of a just express our anger or frustration, or to express our exact exhilaration and joy, if it gets suppressed or dampened, if someone sort of says, don't get too excited, it hasn't happened yet, for example, or someone says, oh, come on, cheer up. If you suppress those emotions, they get stuck inside you, and then your body is having to process all of that, as well as trying to create the new habits and behaviors you're going on with. And that's when we get irritable. That's when we can't make decisions. It's when we get into overwhelm. So I want you to think about today is, as a listener of other people, just think about, what would need to change or what is happening for you to be able to listen and just simply observe that space when somebody is physically, emotionally going through change, because it's a transitional process. And for yourself, what's the emotions and experience you have when things are changing? Do you notice as the season changes, do your emotions change? How many times do you have that conversation with yourself? I feel a bit low because there's no sun, and when the sun's out, I feel great. It's just think about that self-talk. What's happening for you? What is your change process? And when you know your change process and you understand how you think and how you process, how you experience change, one, you can allow yourself to be with that situation, that feeling or that emotion, and know it won't last, because every emotion is transient, it's temporary. It's only when we hang on to it or we try and lock it away because somebody else can't handle it or we can't handle it, that it ends up getting stuck inside us. So remember, all emotions are transient. They're not permanent, they're temporary, they will pass if you just allow them to pass through your system. So just think about the emotions that you experience, and do you have someone that will listen to you and honour that emotion with you and just let it pass? And with your family, friends, your clients, are you able to really listen and just allow that space for that emotion to have its moment and then be gone? Because the way that we listen to each other will usually cause people to dampen those emotions down. They get then stuck in our system, and then that's when we can't make change, because we can't keep clarity of what we want. We can't map out the process and keep the confidence there, because we're too busy dealing with all this irritability, all these tiny unresolved emotions that are inside of us, and we have nowhere to take them or nowhere to go with them. So I hope that's useful. I can't see any comments. I'll just have a quick look to see if there's anything there. Can't see any. But I'd love to hear your discussions later. I'm just going off to a meeting, but please comment below. How easy do you find it to listen to other people when they've got extreme emotions? Are you aware of your own emotions that you experience when you go through change? And what difference would it make, do you think, if you could understand your emotional journey that you go on when you're experiencing change? And how much better would you be resourced to allow yourself, if you had people that could listen to you, you could just release it and then spend more time at peace in your mind when you're going through anything that's a bit different or a bit of a stretch for you? Hope that's useful. Have a great weekend. Speak to you soon.